Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Derek here.
Fabian here.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
We've got a bunch of stories. It's always good on a Tuesday to have a little fresh meat in here.
It is.
Let's jump into these because there's a lot of big stories, and I want to start off with Adam Levine. So tell us what's going on.
Well, this is the biggest story of the week so far, and it's
early in the week, but
early in the week, but it has taken over Twitter completely, and we got to talk about it. Adam Levine has been accused of being involved in an affair, cheating on his wife, allegedly, of several years, whom he has like 3 children with at this point.
Bahati Prinsloo, a Victoria's Secret model.
Yes, exactly. An Instagram model posted a TikTok, which has now gone viral. Her name is Sumner Stroh.
And that's going to be important. Her name is Sumner Stroh.
That's correct. She posted this video basically saying, yeah, I was involved with Adam Levine. She doesn't say exactly when. Oh, she says, yeah, last year in 2021.
Right.
We were talking. She says that this was when she was younger. It was a year ago, so I don't know how old she is.
Yeah, she's still quite young. Even
yeah,
when you
she
watch
says
the
that
video.
she was naive, that she didn't know what was going on. She didn't know. She was alluding to the fact that she didn't know that he was married and had children. That's BS.
But he's a very public figure.
In any case, she says that he basically roped her into the relationship, was pursuing her, and that she was with him for a year.
And she says she's got receipts, right? And she shows some.
She says she has receipts, and she showed some. A disturbing one. She says that basically sometime within the past year or so, he DM'd her on Instagram after they had had a falling out, apparently, after they weren't seeing each other anymore. She says that he came back into my life through this DM and said, hey, I'm having a kid.
A third child
with my wife. It's going to be a boy. I want to name this kid after you, Sumner. How do you feel about that? And then she says something to the effect of, he apparently said something to the effect of, quote, dead serious, as if he was seriously considering that. She didn't say that whether she responded to him or not, but that's basically the claim, that they had an affair. It lasted about a year. There was a fizzling out, and then later he reached out. And
really loved her name and wanted to name his unborn child with Bahati after his alleged mistress.
Yes.
What a strange move. I mean,
Yes.
I don't know the truth of this. I mean, this is a woman who appeared on TikTok and made these allegations. She does have some text messages, but, text messages and DMs can be doctored. We don't know what's exactly going on, but I mean, this is pretty damaging.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody is making jokes, and not making jokes, but they're roasting Adam Levine, and they're kind of crucifying him a little bit too, saying, how is it possible the man married to a Victoria's Secret model can go cheat on a nobody like an IG model? And not only that, but then take the extra step to potentially entertain the idea of naming your child after that person.
Very strange. And
It's kind of twisted. If it is in fact true, which frankly I don't know how you feel about it, I buy it. If she has DMs don't lie. Like, you can pull up the app, and if they really wanted to get to the bottom of this, the DMs are there. I think. I believe it.
It's so strange. It's so out of left field that it's hard to imagine it being completely concocted. Right.
I mean, nowhere,
she does.
Right.
She's giving. I don't know that. Social media is a very strange place, and people can do things to chase clout. But what she's saying is sort of matter of fact, and she's showing the receipt. She's not doing sort of a very dramatic sort of expose. She's just sort of describing a situation that she says she had.
It reminds me a little bit of it's not in the same ballpark at all, but it reminds me of the Armie Hammer thing when those DMs leaked. DMs are DMs. People have DMs, and they show the DMs. Like, when A-list celebrities like this are DMing people like this from their public accounts,
yes,
it's insane to me. It's like, how are you not covering your tracks?
I'll tell you why.
You know these things are going to be leaked and surfaced. You're too high profile to do that. Like, use a Finsta. Do something.
I agree,
to at least give yourself the benefit of the doubt.
But Adam Levine, you know how old he is? I know, because I've looked at several articles. He's 43 years old, and there's this generational divide where I'm 42 years old. So people born in the 80s early 80s have a facility with social media, but not a complete understanding of its ramifications.
They're just diving in.
They're sort of in the middle.
Right.
Like, we can use it.
They're
We're
not that
oldies.
sophisticated, basically.
Exactly. And I think Adam might be caught in this world of like, hey, I was just like chatting up a lady. You don't sort of think about the broader implications of what you're doing in the same way as very young people who grew up indoctrinated in this world understand, like, oh, everything's permanent, and they're much more careful, and I can use all these different apps. He's like, hey, I'm a super famous guy. I'm on Instagram. How does this work? And you just send it sort of mindlessly. But this is fascinating. So what is, I believe Adam has now commented on this. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's issued a statement now. He basically said yes, I did text her and I was sexting her, but we didn't have sex, is what he's saying. That we didn't actually have a physical relationship. This woman's claiming they did have a physical relationship. She said
although her text messages don't show any indication of that. They're just text messages from a guy who's saying, hey, I like your name, and maybe some sexting.
I think he called her hot or something. That you're so freaking hot or whatever. So
not everything materializes into a physical relationship. So she doesn't have exactly that proof, and you have to take him a bit at his word. It's a little he said, she said. She's indicating some relationship, although she's vague about the contours of that relationship, whether it was, very, very intimate or limited mostly to text. It's unclear even from her. Sort of.
But here's the question. If Adam Levine is telling the truth, saying that all I did was sext her and just chat her up, and I didn't have sex with her in a physical relationship, even if that itself is true, that's still pretty damning, I gotta say. Is it not?
I completely agree. That's called sort of an emotional affair. You're not allowed to do those when you're married with 2 children either. But it does change the complexion a little bit, if it is just sort of an intimate emotional affair versus a physical affair. That means, it's more dangerous to have a physical affair on your wife. You can bring something into the home. You can have children out of wedlock.
But an emotional affair, like you're saying, can have just as bad of an impact. And also, if this DM about the child name is true, which I think it is, if he said that to her,
that's some sociopath stuff.
It is sociopathic, and it's also that's got to hit the wife hard. I wouldn't be surprised if this leads to something more. Tom Brady and Giselle are breaking up right now.
You're right. Maybe this is the season for breaking up with model girlfriends. Camila Morone is a model with Leo DiCaprio.
Right.
They break up.
But that's not that serious of a relationship, because Camila Morone's like a young kid. It doesn't matter. Anyway,
these things happen in threes, though.
They do.
If you find a third one, you let me know.
Right.
Let's move on for now to Adam Sandler. This is an interesting story. So Adam Sandler, we've got some photos of him on the website. You can check them out, and he's walking around with a cane. For a person my age to see Adam Sandler limping around on a cane, that's big news, because he's a very physical, vibrant comedian.
Active guy.
Plays
he hoops. He plays hoop. He's famously known for his hoops and his huge wardrobe, and he
loves wearing those long old school
but he still
basketball
balls
shorts.
Though.
He balls. He's quite good.
He is good.
Well, he's on a cane now, and so people were wondering what's going on. He's still very active. He drops movies on Netflix all the time. Some of them good, some of them bad. He just had a basketball movie that was actually pretty good. Where he was like a scout for
the Philadelphia 76ers.
For the Philadelphia 76ers. I actually enjoyed that movie.
Okay.
But he's out in the Pacific Palisades. He's walking with a cane in his right hand for support with his wife, Jackie. And people with knowledge of the situation are saying Adam's using the cane because of a hip surgery. Now, he had a hip surgery around Labor Day. The guy's got a very busy film schedule, and you need some time to convalesce and actually build up the muscles when you have hip surgery.
And of course, you need some support too for that.
Absolutely,
which is what the cane is.
And it'd be so he's just had a procedure basically. And he's now sort of walking around town, probably strengthening the muscles, doing some physical therapy, and he will be okay. This wasn't an accident. A lot of people jump to the conclusion that this guy's so active physically playing basketball, maybe you should hang it up, maybe had an injury on the court. Doesn't seem to be the situation. Just had hip surgery. We do fall apart when we get older, all right?
Yeah,
he's a man now in his late 40s or 50s even.
Yeah, at least. I'm a little worried about this because, like we just said, he's very active. He loves basketball, and he's also in a lot of movies still. He's still acting a lot. And I'm curious with the hip surgery, I'm hoping he gets better and rehabilitates or whatever, but is there a problem? We didn't touch on what happened or why he needed the hip surgery.
Yeah,
was it
sometimes
an injury?
they just give up. Your bones just have some problems when you get older.
Right. And he's rich enough to afford the best hip surgery, obviously.
He might have a great bionic hip. Look, sometimes your mind doesn't go. Your body doesn't agree with where you are mentally in life. Look at Harvey. Harvey had he was on an electric bike and had an accident on it because. Should he be riding one? Well, why not? He feels young and vibrant, but your body doesn't always sort of agree with you, and you can have these injuries, and it's hard to recover.
I can actually speak to that quickly. I hurt my knee over Labor Day weekend.
How old are you now, Fabian?
I'm 30, dude.
Oh,
I'm 30.
boy.
Yeah, I hurt my knee. I was lifting weights, and I hurt it. It's still hurting. I'm wearing a knee brace right now under my jeans, and I got to go to an orthopedist later this week to actually see what's going on.
And you don't bounce back like you were in your 20s, right?
No,
you sort of feel it a little bit more.
Yeah, dude, the swelling. Anyway, so
wait till you hit the 40s.
I get Adam Sandler's pain here.
Well, anyway, surgery was a success from what we're hearing, so he should be back playing pickup basketball and in a bunch of movies soon. But it is strange to see someone who
I grew up with. It's a striking image.
I think of him as perpetually in his 20s.
Because the thing is, the photos of Adam Sandler surfaced over the weekend. I didn't run with the story because I was wanting to wait and see, and I knew we needed the full team to do that during the week, which we got the story. But it's a striking image because he still has a youthful spirit about him, and
will.
of course he will. Seeing him with the cane looked very frail and feeble and old manish, and it's a startling image to say the least.
It is startling, but hopefully he
get well
bounces
soon,
back.
dude. Yes,
get well soon. All right, let's move to a serious story.
Yes,
this is Adnan Syed, who was the subject of the huge phenomenon Serial podcast back in 2014. Basically, true crime podcasts were sort of a fledgling little enterprise until Serial came along, and it captured sort of the national attention.
It was probably the biggest podcast of the mid-2010s.
Gigantic.
For sure.
So the subject was Adnan Syed, back in 1999, was accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend, Hae-Min Lee, by strangling her in a fit of rage. Some wondered whether it was an honor killing of some sort after she had disrespected him in some way in the relationship.
Right.
He was accused of this. He was tried and convicted, but there were a lot of...
Sentenced to life, I think, right?
Sentenced to life in prison, and was serving that life in prison since 2000. So he's been in prison for 22 years. He's a very different person. He was 17 years old when this happened. He was in high school. Now he's a full adult man. So he was in prison for 22 years, but the case got so much attention again in 2014 that people started to re-examine and file petitions to appeal the conviction because there were a lot of irregularities in how this case was tried.
From what I understand, I haven't heard Serial myself. You have, but apparently the hosts were laying out a pretty good case, raising a lot of doubt as to his innocence and basically suggesting that there might have been other suspects or a potential other killer, and that he was innocent. That was the whole thing, basically. Yeah,
basically, they examined the timeline. They weren't sort of advocating for one way or another, but they were saying, look, this case has some holes in it. And they wanted to identify them for the viewers. And some of the holes were about cell towers pinging, whether there were other suspects that could potentially have a murder motive against Hae-Min. And all of these irregularities sort of amounted to some doubt. And in our criminal justice system in America, we say people are innocent until proven guilty. We care about convicting only the actually guilty people, and we're willing to let some people go. We create a very high burden beyond a reasonable doubt because we're willing to let a guilty person go if you can't really prove fully that they're guilty. And that's just the way the criminal justice system. And they said maybe there's not enough here. Many appeals were filed that were kicked down, even to the U.S. Supreme Court. He tried to overturn this conviction. They declined to hear the case. But now prosecutors in Maryland, which is where this case took place, filed a motion saying we need to vacate this conviction 22 years after the fact.
Immediately, too.
This is wild. You don't want to lock up someone who is potentially innocent. So they said, look, we've continued to gather information. And one thing they found was a big, big no-no. When you have exculpatory evidence, which is evidence tending to produce to undermine your confidence that someone is guilty. Basically,
you have to share it.
Innocent evidence. You got to share it with the other side. They're allowed to use it and examine it. And that apparently wasn't done. And if that's not done by your prosecutors, you got to throw out the conviction and say we need to start again and examine this case with a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah. So basically, the state attorneys at the time, from what the prosecutors are saying now, is that the state attorneys handling this case at the time did not share this evidence. And what this evidence apparently is handwritten notes. I'm not sure how many, but at least a couple handwritten notes suggesting that there might have been two other suspects and that there might have been threats against Hae-Min at the time from other people.
That's right. Now, this doesn't mean Adnan is innocent. It has nothing to do with that. It just says we don't have enough confidence in our conviction of Adnan as the person who committed this crime that we have to let him go and see this thing through. Now, he's on house arrest for 30 days, and they will decide whether they want to retry him.
They have
I can
30
tell you
days
that's very, very unlikely.
They have 30 days to decide if they are going to refile charges against him.
It's very unlikely they will retry him now that they've released him.
Why is that, though?
Because they've now uncovered these two suspects, and in order to sort of retry Adnan, they're going to have to sort of deal with that.
You're right. It's going to take longer than 30 days to get to this new, right? If they're going to reinvestigate this whole thing, because that's what they're doing. They're reinvestigating all of this with all the new evidence that surfaced. Okay.
And he served 22 years. It was maybe a heat of passion kind of killing. So a lot of people think, well, he served a lot of time already. I know everyone thinks murder is a life sentence, but there are different degrees of murder. A lot of people say this was done in a fit of passion, and that's a lesser crime than a first-degree premeditated murder. So I don't know. I would suspect that they're not going to retry him. The family of Hae-Min is quite upset.
They're outraged.
They're outraged. All of a sudden, out of the blue, they think this case is settled. You know, they are still grieving the loss of Hae-Min all these years later, and they see the guy who they think, who the state has told them is the murderer of their daughter, has been released. This is interesting to me because obviously it's very emotionally charged. You think the prosecutors, we convicted a guy, this is over. My take on it is the prosecutors are not the victim's attorneys. I think a lot of people think that the victim is
they're
represented.
They're advocating for them, obviously.
They're advocating for justice. So prosecutors, unlike a defense attorney, they are officers of the court. They're trying to find the truth.
Right.
Now, it sounds like they're there to represent the victim's interests because they go out and they say this person has died and that person is guilty and I'll make sure they're put away and they'll pay for their crimes. But they're actually in the search of truth. They're not just like a defense attorney who is saying, I want to exonerate my client no matter, no holds barred. Defense attorneys are not as interested in attaining the truth. They're interested in defending their client.
For sure.
Prosecutors are not a victim's attorney. And I think a lot of times victims conflate them in their head and say, oh, you're the guy representing to give justice to our family. And they're not. They're there to seek truth. And this prosecutor said, the truth may be that Adnan is not guilty. So
right, and Heyman's brother beamed into the court yesterday when this was happening, and he basically said he felt betrayed by the prosecutor's office. He said, we've been led this entire time to believe that Adnan was the killer. We've been being told this. We were told this for years and years and years, and now all of a sudden, maybe there's a new regime in charge or I don't know what's going on. But
no, look, prosecutors are elected most of the time, and the people who prosecuted Adnan in the early 2000s
it was years ago,
not the same prosecutors.
Sure. And Heyman's family attorney was on CNN. We just did a story about it, and he was kind of reiterating their outrage and basically saying that the family was left in the dark here. They were left out of this entire process. And he was saying something to the effect of the family has an open mind that if there was actually evidence to suggest another killer or whatever, they would entertain that. They'd be willing to kind of like embark on that. And maybe even advocate for his release, but they're more upset about the fact that they were left out. They were shut out of the whole thing.
Does that offend you? I'm sort of curious. When I read these stories, the family I'll take them at their word. They were left in the dark. Does the prosecutor owe them communication? They're out to discover who murdered Heyman. Why do they need to involve Heyman's brother and tell them they're developing theories?
It's a courtesy, right? Especially if they're the immediate family of the victim. Yeah, you should have given them a heads up. But with this, though,
as a matter of professional courtesy, not necessarily of fact finding, which is what the prosecutors want to do. They may not want to distract themselves.
Their family attorney was saying, "Oh, the family's open to new evidence." Well, there is new evidence. So what are you more outraged about? The fact that you were left in the dark, or the fact that he's been released? Because I think the attorney's trying to make it seem like they're outraged about all of it. But I think they're more so outraged about being left in the dark. But honestly, who cares? If there's new evidence suggesting there's another killer, it is what it is. Maybe this guy didn't kill your sister. You know. So
here's what's fascinating: in 2014, when Serial came out, all of the focus was on the unjustified conviction of Adnan. Everyone was like, we need to free this guy. What do we do? A bunch of advocates came out and said, I want to do pro bono work. I'll file petitions. Now that he's released, I think you're going to see the narrative shift to sympathy for Heyman Lee. If there is no killer that has been convicted that is serving time for this, I mean, she was a young, vibrant girl.
Sure.
Her death
had her whole life ahead
of her. I think you're going to see the narrative shift to, hey, why is no one in prison over this? And then maybe people are going to say, isn't there pretty good evidence that he did it? And you're going to see this pendulum go back and forth. And this is the way.
And people are going to weigh, like, which evidence supports the case? Like, does the evidence support the fact that he killed her more? Or does the evidence support that he didn't kill her more? And I think if they actually look at it, I'm not in the weeds on this case, but if people look at it objectively, I think there might be perhaps more evidence that he did, in fact, kill her than not. I'm not sure.
There was quite a bit of evidence.
Right. There's a conviction, right?
Convictions are tough. And I wonder if you're going to see sort of all the warm feelings towards Adnan being out of prison start to sort of fade a little bit when people remember that there was someone murdered.
It's not completely related, but it kind of reminds me of the Britney Spears thing where there was so much people advocating for her at first, and now that she's out, people are kind of seeing this troubling behavior, and they're like, I don't know, maybe you should have stayed in that conservatorship, actually.
I think you're right. The tide flows in and out, and it's always fascinating to watch at a remove and say, oh, now everyone who loved Adnan is all of a sudden sort of focusing again on Heyman, because when the focus was on Adnan, Heyman's family was like, hey, what about us? We're the victims here. I know you feel bad for this guy, but we think he murdered our my daughter or my sister.
It's also similar.
You'll see this happen.
It reminds me a little bit too of Kim Kardashian too. She's recently she was advocating for a death row inmate, and there was a lot of documentaries about his potential innocence and yada yada yada. But the family of the victims, they were outraged about Kim Kardashian trying to help this guy. So it's kind of, you're right. It's kind of mixed,
right?
Yeah.
When you watch these things happen over and over again. All right, let's move to
our final story.
Our final story, and you pick. We've got two to choose from. I want you to pick your favorite of the oddball stories.
I'm going to do the Beyond Meat one because the NyQuil one is silly. It's a TikTok challenge. People are apparently cooking chicken with NyQuil.
Don't marinate your chicken in NyQuil.
Essentially, that's the moral of the story.
New Tide
I don't even exactly, pretty much. But the Beyond Meat one is a little more funny and punny at the same time. So the COO what's his name?
Doug Ramsey.
Doug Ramsey. He was arrested over the weekend for allegedly biting a man's nose, and not just biting it, but like apparently biting a piece of it off. That's the allegation here. So he was leaving a football game in Arkansas. I think it might have been a college game. He got into some kind of fender bender on the way out with somebody. Was so angry about it. Got out of the car. Started allegedly attacking the other person, breaking their windshield and whatever. And then the guy gets out. The other driver gets out. Tries to kind of fight him a little bit. In the scuffle, Doug here allegedly bit this guy's nose. He took a chomp out of his nose.
This
That's what
sounds
cops are
like
saying.
an Onion headline. I mean, Beyond Meat is a company that has devoted itself to
It's vegan food, right?
Vegan food. It's sort of creating fake meat that is close enough to meat that people will stop eating the real thing,
right?
And they'll move over towards these plant-based products.
That's what everybody was running with.
This guy's
here.
chomping on a nose. I mean, look, fights happen, and sometimes you just use what's available to you, and you may bite. But for the COO of Beyond Meat to allegedly take a chunk out of a guy's nose, it's pretty hard to write a headline like that.
It is.
Sort of fascinating.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, apparently, according to the police report, they say he bit the owner's nose, ripping the flesh off the tip of the nose. You can imagine the cop doing this, being like, "And your profession again, sir?" The COO of what is the company?
They might have gotten a chuckle at it, too.
I think they probably had fun writing this report. Hopefully the guy is okay. Look, it's not fun to get a chunk ripped out of your body. Evander Holyfield had a chunk ripped out of his ear. They don't grow back, but...
Yeah, but
right.
Now that everyone knows how high profile this guy is, I'm sure there's going to be a lawsuit coming too, and there's going to be, because he's loaded,
sure.
COO of a huge company. He's probably got tons of money, so this is not over. But the story made for a funny headline. It's obviously a serious thing, but like it was just hilarious.
Yeah, it's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
With that, we'll do it, and go ahead and download the podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Take it easy. Bye.